Hey guys, welcome back. Today I'm going to show you how to install these lights that I put in my shop. If you've seen some of my earlier videos, they were really dark, hard to see lots of times, and just not as good quality. And that's because the lights were just really dim, they were old, and honestly what you didn't see off camera was I was plugging in those lights with the extension cords. They weren't wired into a switch or anything. They had just plug-ins. I had to keep moving around trying to plug them in, moving shop lights around, mobile shop lights, trying to get enough light for you to see what I was doing and enough light for myself to see what I'm doing when I'm working to make sure I'm staying safe. But in my opinion, you can't have a shop bright enough, so I might even install a few more lights just to make it a little bit brighter and make sure there's no dark spots in my shop. But stick around, I'll show you guys how I wired in these lights, did all the electrical, and mounted them to the ceiling. Here's the previous layout for my lighting in my shop. It is far too dim and underpowered for the space that I have. So I'll be extending the lights, moving one and adding in two longer, much brighter lights into my shop as well. So at the bottom right, you can see my electrical boxes here, the fuse box. The first step will be mounting the boxes onto the ceiling. Next, I'll supply one power line all the way towards the switch. This is what will supply the power to the lights. Then I'll run the wire to the individual boxes, and then I'll mount the lights to the ceiling and then connect those to the boxes as well. And after all this is done, then I'll connect my wiring to the box. The reason why I'm doing that is because I can easily work on it and run all the wires without worrying about the power being supplied. I know it's not connected, so I can easily work on all the wiring. Whenever I'm running electrical or working on it, I always make sure I try to keep the wiring as organized as possible, make sure I work in straight lines and never go skimpy on the fasteners, staples, mounting it to the rafters or wall or wherever I'm working, because it's so easy to get electrical all messed up and disorganized that the more you can do to keep organized, the better in the long run. Now I've got both of the wires ready in my box, and as a rule for me, I normally cut the wire with an excess of 8 to 10 inches. That will give you plenty of space to work on your outlet or switch, whatever you're installing into the box. And if you have to come back later and reinstall something else or trim the wires, you have plenty of room to do so. Once I have the insulation trimmed off of these wires, I can then separate them, and I have a white wire, black wire, and copper, which is the ground. The white wires, I'll be attaching those together. The black, I will be mounting those onto the switch, and then the copper wire, I'll be mounting those with a wire nut together, just like the white. Now before I can attach these wires together with a wire nut or mount them to the switch, I need to trim off the insulation off the end from the white wire and the black wire. The ground is already trimmed off, there is no insulation, you don't have to worry about that one. But I trim off about 3/4 of an inch from the end. That will give you plenty of room to first twist them together with pliers. This just really makes sure that the wires get nice and tight together, there's no shorting out. And then I will then tighten the wire nut down as tight as I can by hand. A good way to tell if the wire nut is tight enough is once it bottoms out in the wire nut, it will then start to twist the wires outside of the wire nut together, and it's a really good way to see that the wire nut is definitely tight enough and it's good to go. Now once those wires are neatly crammed into the back of the box, I can attach the switch. Now when you attach this, you want to make sure you put it in the upward position. That way when you flip on the switch, you're pushing it up, and when you turn it off, you push it down. And sometimes they make it easy and print on and off on the switch, and you can easily see which way is up and which is down. Now before I attach the screws the wires to the screws on this switch, I like to bend a loop in the direction that you tighten the screw. This is really important. When you're tightening down the screw, it doesn't squeeze the wire or push it away from the screw. Instead, this tightens it down and pulls it onto the screw itself as you're tightening it down. And you can see right here, I have it curling towards the direction I am tightening, and it really pulls onto the wire and grips it a whole lot better than the other way. Here is the main junction box. This has all the wires that are going to supply the lights. This one is from the switch. The other three are going to the lights to supply those boxes. So I need to wire nut all four of these together. I'll strip them down and then twist them together with the pliers before attaching the wire nuts. Now wiring the lights is super simple. They'll have a black wire and a white wire. Just wire nut the two wires that are alike together, and then the ground wire, they'll have either a mounting screw that you can mount the wire to, or another grounding wire that you simply wire nut it together. Now for the two longer lights in my shop, I'm going to be using these old lights that have been used for a long time. They work, but I need to make several modifications for this type of wiring, and I'll do that before attaching it to the ceiling. Now the wiring is just about finished up, and one thing that I did not show you is after I get the power on and test it, I then go back and put the covers over top of those three plastic boxes that I put on the ceiling, and then put a cover over that switch just to make sure that nothing gets in there and it makes it safe. Whenever I'm working on electrical throughout my house, I try to clean things up. As you can see, it's still work in progress, but it's getting better, and I'm trying to get it more organized so that it makes sense. Now once all the wiring is complete, I need to shut off the main switch in my circuit box. That way I know the power is off and I can start hooking up my new wiring. Now even though the power is off on this main switch, these two screws on top, you have to be very careful of. Make sure you do not touch those screws because the power is still on. This is the wire that is coming out of the side, and I'm going to be replacing that with the new lights that I'm putting in. And I'll run the wire through the top like the rest, make sure it's nice and neat, and I'll hook that up to the breaker down at the bottom. Now you may have noticed that all the wires in this box have been stripped of the insulation that holds them together. This is so that you can separate the wires, because some of the wires go over to the right of the circuit box and then the others go on the other side. So you need to be able to separate them, and this is another part that you really need to keep this organized and neatly set in here, because this can become a horrible mess and very disorganized very fast. So I'm going to try to keep this as neat as possible and attach the wires similarly to the rest of them in this box. Now if you look over here to the right of the main power switch, this braided galvanized wire that's not insulated, this is normal. It's the ground wire. There's a bar that goes all the way down the side of this box, and all the ground wires will be combined, screwed onto that bar. Doesn't matter the order that they're screwed into. And then on the left side, similar to the grounding wires on the right, is the white wires. All the white wires will be combined onto this bar, tightened down with a set screw, and then the black wires go into the individual switches themselves, supplying power to that circuit. Now all my wiring is connected. I've connected to a breaker switch, and I can now turn on the main breaker and test out the lights, make sure they all work. Alright guys, that just about finishes up my video for today. I turned on the power, tested out, everything works great, the lights are awesome. It's so much brighter than it used to be, and it still could even use some more lights. So I've got a few pictures for you. This is before I rearranged the shop and cleaned it up a ton, but this really just shows you how much brighter it is than the previous videos. Alright, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, and if you want a notification when I upload a video, click on that bell icon, and don't forget to give this a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video. Thanks guys, I'll see you in the next one.